Submitted for your approval. Meet the Last Angry Geek. If you were to meet a dictionary in a bar and ask it for the loosest possible definition of the term celebrity, that dictionary might very well show you a picture of the Last Angry Geek. But later, when that dictionary drunk dials you and asks you if you think it's prettier than the thesaurus, you'd realize just what a terrible mistake you'd made. And tonight, the Last Angry Geek will make a mistake. A mistake that will humiliate him. A mistake that will send him hurtling into the cheap laugh zone. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. Swiping characters from other companies is nothing new, but what happens when it's not DC or Marvel doing it? Does it lead to creative freedom or a bad case of the been there, done that's? Let's try and find out today as we look at Halcyon.
Halcyon is a 5-issue series from Image Comics, co-written by Tara Butters and Mark Guggenheim, who's written for The Flash and Wolverine, and drawn by newcomer Ryan Bodenheim. Halcyon takes place on an Earth with a very familiar assortment of superheroes. Most of the heroes are, in fact, based off of more popular DC or Marvel characters, a trick we've seen used many times before in books like Squadron Supreme or JLA Earth 2. Halcyon follows these heroes when peace unexpectedly breaks out across the globe. How do heroes react to no longer being needed, and can they just accept being given perfection? The first issue opens with Jarhead, a Captain America by way of the Marines, parachuting into Pakistan and killing terrorists. It then cuts to the arch-villain Oculus, hanging out in an alternate reality that serves as a home to all the Oculuses, or is that Oculi? When they need to escape their current reality, they come here. One of his counterparts tells him that he'll soon be returning to his home Earth, and he'll never come back. Jarhead finds his quarry, Bin Laden, is already dead.
Strangely Foreseen was this title. It predicted Bin Laden's death 7 months before it happened. I wonder what else this book predicts. Having a curry before the show may have been a mistake.
Saber, our book's Batman, is shown taking down some criminals while his automated systems and faithful dog Evie shadow him. After handing the crooks over to the cops, one officer makes an offhand mention that he's surprised Saber didn't kill either man, an idea that seems to shock the vigilante. While in India, Zenith, our Supergirl character, is apparently teaming up with Dulcine from Street Fighter to destroy a giant robot. When she's called by Saber and asked to meet in America. Saber and Zenith, or Devlin and Amanda, share some sharp words indicating that they don't seem to like each other. They then sleep together, which seems to confirm that fact. Saber points out that the crime rates have dropped across the globe. They're looking at historic lows. When Zenith points out that that's what they've been working for their whole lives, Saber reasons that such a large change is unnatural. Zenith calls for a meeting of Halcyon, this world's Justice League. This includes Enos, a super-intelligent chimp. Null, a living computer program. Triumph, this year's Miss Olympia champion, and finally Transom, who in no way resembles the Flash except that he's a super fast white guy.
I was going to use the term honky, but I was told that that word might be offensive. But you know what? I don't care. That's our word for us, and I'm taking it back. Right, honkies? Yeah!
Halcyon realizes someone must be affecting human behavior and suspects someone named Cyclops. But before they can investigate further, word leaks out that Oculus has just surrendered to the authorities of the World Court. Issue 2 opens with Transom driving himself too hard to prevent natural disasters. He fails to stop a tsunami and calls on Zenith for help, and she's more than happy to have the work to do. The remaining members of Halcyon debate their place in this newer, gentler world. While some like Enos have a purpose beyond this life, Triumph finds herself depressed by her new irrelevance. They also wonder if Oculus, who's now turned his terrorist organization towards world aid, is behind this piece, as it's the perfect way to dispose of superheroes. A non-costume Saber surprises a woman going by Jane Doe. She immediately cops to not knowing where Emily, or Cyclops, is. Saber recognizes that he can no longer even work up the will to fire a gun, but tells Jane he won't leave without the missing telepath's location. Jane admits that Cyclops started to control her mind in an effort to make Jane stop worrying about her, eventually getting Jane to leave in some effort to protect her. Cyclops' last mission was against a psychopathic cult leader named Tragic. Following up on this lead, Saber finds Tragic has been discharged from his asylum. As Zenith revels in the fact that her great powers no longer means she has great responsibilities, Tragic can provide no insight into what changed Cyclops or why it seemingly led to a new utopia, but he dares Saber to brutally dissect him to find out, yet the vigilante can't bring himself to hurt the reformed killer. Finally, Halcyon calls a press conference announcing to the world they've decided to disband and retire. Issue 3 begins with Triumph leaping from a tall building, her cape flapping in the wind, as we cut back to Saber, who continues his quest for Cyclops. He defies Transom's faith that what's happening to the world is a miracle. Enos is asked to join a prestigious research firm that's investigating this new wave of goodwill. Everyone investigating has apparently been suffering from a desire not to investigate, and when they push themselves to investigate, they suffer nosebleeds and other signs of physical distress. Saber remembers a time he and Cyclops had one of those accidental superhero fights. She claimed that aggression itself was the problem and should be eliminated from humanity. As Zenith flies Saber to Iceland, the couple bicker as Zenith wonders why Saber just can't accept utopia. He claims it's about getting answers, but she counters that a world without crimes makes his existence meaningless. Oculus, meanwhile, enacts a less threatening version of The Shining and presents a doctor with the cure for cancer. Every cancer. Zenith rips her way into a hidden bunker for something called the Spherical Company. Saber then has Null reconstruct whatever data was kept on site. They find surveillance footage that showed Cyclops worked here for several months and head to the lab where she stayed. The duo find an interdimensional vault that once breached contains Cyclops' body. Well, most of it.
Must resist urge to say she lost her head.
Weren't you gonna fart?
Shut up.
The issue ends just as it began, with Triumph flying, or rather, falling. She doesn't have the ability to fly. She's just committed suicide. Issue 4 picks up with dual autopsies on Triumph and Cyclops. As Enos notes that the GHP, or Global Humanitarian Phenomenon, doesn't stop you from harming yourself, Saber begins to bleed on Cyclops. He realizes who's behind GHP but won't tell Zenith lest she try and stop him. Of course, he also suspects that she can't stop him. Jarhead informs Pentagon officials that the various world powers are continuing to move soldiers into place and stockpile weapons to such a point that if the GHP is removed and aggression returns, the world could teeter into World War III. Zenith makes one last attempt to reason with Saber, covertly planting a homing beacon on him. He admits that he loves her, but is also prepared to stop her if she interferes with his attempts to end the GHP. Saber then breaks into a prison and confronts Oculus. Oculus was behind Spherical. This end of aggression has made his greatest enemies irrelevant. Oculus taunts Saber with his dilemma. Does he allow a utopia created by a monster to continue, or does he end it knowing that all violence that follows would be his fault? Saber counters that the next death won't be by his hands as his dog enters. GHP doesn't affect animals. With the knowledge of the device's location at hand, he flies towards Oculus's base only to be confronted by a collection of Earth's heroes and villains, all determined to kill him to keep Utopia. Zenith explains that the GHP is less powerful here, at the eye of the storm as it were, and she and Saber debate free will before Saber reveals he's a distraction, the shape-shifting villain Camo. Saber infiltrates Oculus's lair and nullifies Transom's powers as they're both in the middle of a super-speed attack. Saber finds a weapon cache with a note from Oculus for him. Enos sends a message saying Saber has been neutralized, but Zenith doesn't buy it and orders the heroes back to the device as she takes on Camo. In an Iron Man-esque suit of armor, Saber kills most of the heroes, as Null and Zenith finish off Camo and Saber's dog. Enos goes for a suicide dive, but Saber survives. Zenith unloads on him, but he manages to fight her off. As things look to be turning in his favor, Jarhead and the US military arrive and Saber gets beaten down. Saber unleashes his armor's full potential and disintegrates Jarhead.
Okay, credit where credit's due. That is a cool fucking page.
However, Oculus's base was designed to resist the weapon. Zenith and Saber say their goodbyes. He won't stop trying to destroy the device, a device created by an evil man that imposes on free will. And Zenith won't stop defending it, a device that has turned off mankind's most destructive tendencies. With directions left by Oculus, Saber has become Oculus's replacement, one man waging war on the world, which Oculus had apparently planned all along.
Okay, this book had some cool ideas, but ultimately I feel like it fails in how it presented itself.
The theme of the book is the debate between Zenith and Saber. If something wonderful happens as a result of something terrible, what is the major concern? Do you embrace the benefits, or do you reject them because they came from a flawed start? This debate ultimately is never answered, with the reader allowed to make his own determination, but it's stretched out over 5 issues to the point where, by the end, I didn't even care about the answer anymore. In each issue, Zenith and Saber have the same debate. It becomes tedious as neither is willing to budge on the issue or even concede the other might have a point. The most interesting thing about the plot is the ending, a hero becoming a villain for the sake of freeing the world. It's an interesting, if unoriginal, idea that's a take off of the ending of Watchmen. But instead of getting blown up a la Rorschach, Saber is now free to try and overthrow this forced utopia. However, this should have been the middle of the story. Peace is imposed, Saber turns villain in order to try and destroy said peace, and then some final resolution is reached with either Zenith or Saber triumphant. There are also plot holes aplenty, like the appearance of Camo out of nowhere. Shouldn't he have been established earlier? Instead of having a villain who agrees with Saber just appear out of nowhere with exactly the right powers to fool Halcyon? Pretty damn convenient. And why did Cyclops have to die to impose this peace? Did they need to study her brain? Cyclops almost feels like a red herring. We're led to think she's behind this peace, and she is in a way, but in reality it's Oculus who is the villain. And Oculus, like most of the characters, is pretty one-dimensional and unexplored. We never understand why he's imposing this peace, presumably to do away with all of the superheroes. But he winds up in jail and seems to predict his replacement by Saber. Why did he do all this? We never get a really good reason. And the lifting of characters. If it's done right, like in Squadron Supreme, it lets the creators explore newer characters while letting the readers already feel a bond. But we never explore the Halcyon characters. We never have a bit of motivation for why they do the things they do. It's like this lifting was done so you can just look and say, oh, Saber's Batman, so he's a human vigilante. Zenith is an alien with power, and Oculus is a scarred genius. Doing that frees the creators from having to give you any background, but the characters are poorer for it. The art itself is decent. There's nothing really wrong with Bodenheim's art, and I did really love the page of Jarhead's death, but otherwise the characters all seem to share the same body type more or less, and don't really look different enough from one another to make me feel like he isn't an amateur, which he is. He could have used some more seasoning before drawing this book, but I guess that's what indie books like this are good for. Experience.
The script was all around disappointing. It was lazy and failed to make me care about anything that was happening in the book. Guggenheim and Butters aimed high with the concept, but shot low with the realization. It ends in an interesting place, so if a sequel ever materializes, I might check that out, but if you're thinking of picking this book up, I'd say pass. I give Halcyon 1 out of 5 stars. Hoping that I'll someday find out just what the hell Halcyon means, I'm the Last Angry Geek, and I'll see you here next time on Comic Book. P.U. Allow me. No!
Ow! The Last Angry Geek. A man who thought he could review a noxious piece of gas, only to be overwhelmed by the noxious gas within. A man who is passing through the cheap laugh zone.